Believe it or not, there's a lot of craft in the original Candyman. Foreshadowing, parallels between people and insects, real-life fears mingling with imaginary ones. While it may lack major recognition, Candyman doesn't lack depth. It's not a generic horror movie. Adapted from an original story by horror legend Clive Barker and interpreted with a distinct American flavor, it's a thoughtful look at our dark side, as well as a novel take on curiosity killing the cat. This is accomplished not merely with gruesome imagery or loud noises, but by using the language of cinema to build an engrossing, dreamlike atmosphere.
You don't believe all that nonsense anyway, do you?
I don't. You?
No. All right.
Candyman, 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 Candyman.
Candyman. Oh, you chicken! You have to do it 5 times. Come on, go.
I'm sorry, no.
I did
Better
it.
say I'm sorry.
So let's talk atmosphere. There are a lot of movies considered atmospheric, as if it was a subgenre itself. Movies like Beyond the Black Rainbow, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Blade Runner, Fight Club, Lost Highway, Antichrist. Just check the endless trail of IMDb users' personal lists, and you'll see the dark, suspenseful, and abstract films that always get associated with the label atmospheric. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Atmosphere is a kind of brother to tone, which is how a movie feels. But rather than just describe the feeling, atmosphere is the engrossing emotional force field that surrounds you and separates you from the outside world, keeping the tone wrapped tightly all around you. The filmmaker's tools are the same tools that build an atmosphere: music, sound design, movement of camera, color, light, pacing, what's shown on screen and what's hidden from it. These are the basic elements of making any movie, but done with the purpose in mind, they can build an immersive bubble between the viewer and their everyday life outside the movie. You slip inside the story, forget who you are, and become a part of the dream. Candyman is in fact a very dreamlike film. The situations feel very real at first, but soon grow to be very strange, and in this case, terrifying. A nightmare. It's gothic, suspenseful, it makes you leery of what's around each and every corner. And just like Candyman himself, it breathes down your neck. So what makes all this work atmospherically? When I took another look at the movie, 3 things stood out to me over the rest: camera movement, sound design, and the dreamlike presentation of the story. A fairly basic opening shot gets the viewer's gears turning right away, with or without realizing it. The camera is flying over Chicago's highways, against the sinister musical arrangements of renowned creepy composer Philip Glass. Seems innocent, but the Dracula music insists you're not here for something nice. Then a hard cut, and Candyman speaks over a swarm of buzzing bees.
They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
The squirming and humming grows more intense as the camera pulls in on the little aliens.
I'll split you from your groin to your gullet.
Spooky stuff, but what makes it even more unnerving is the calm, controlled hushed tones of actor Tony Todd. Did I mention Tony Todd? His performance is another big sell for this movie.
Your death will be a tale to frighten children, to make lovers cling closer in their rapture.
Next, a little subconscious humor in comparison. Cars swarming around the city, and now bees swarming first in a mass, then over the skyline of the same city. And the menacing voice bleeds out into the face of our lead character, set to something like a Dracula lullaby. We get this one shot of the real world, and then we're immediately pulled right into another daydream. This time, in the form of a student telling a scary story, an urban legend. The atmosphere has formed and wrapped its protective bubble all around us. We're barely 4 minutes into the film, and already all three elements are firing on all cylinders. Dreamy camera moves, unnerving sounds, and just enough of the plot to start to draw you in without showing too much or being over the top. Until, that is, the biggest mistake in the movie. We're supposed to buy Ted Raimi as a bad boy. A bad boy in corduroy pants.
No?
So, we're back in the real world. The setup is Helen, our lead character, is a grad student studying urban legends, particularly the story of Candyman, a killer who's summoned much like the real-life urban legend Bloody Mary. Say the name in the mirror 5 times and he appears behind you. With his hook for a hand, what happens next is a safe bet. So far, her research has been routine. She records interviews about the legends and makes a bunch of academic conclusions. But when she hears a version of the story associated with a real murder in the local projects, she decides to dig deeper, and her life turns into a nightmare a little more with each clue. The suspense is often accomplished through sweeping, flowing camera moves and Steadicam shots.
Who is that?
Like peeking your head around a corner to see what's there before you enter the room. Only this time, you're not in control of the peeking. The movie is. It's evident throughout the film in the establishing shots. And in this early scene in Helen's apartment, the camera flows from this side of the room to the other, pushes slowly in on a dark, empty apartment next door, and then slowly pulls out. Swings around, and pushes back in on sleeping Helen.
Trevor?
Just in time for a false scare from her husband Trevor. The movie is building tension by taking control of what you see, almost like you're being compelled along in a hypnotic daze. The slow, sweeping moves are definitely something dreamy, very unlike the bouncy movements we make when walking normally, when we're in control. But we're not in control here. The movie is. The next scene in the public housing building has similar stuff. Big overhead perspectives we don't see much of in real life. Smooth, sweeping camera moves out of our control. The movie telling us, like an unconscious dreamer, what we're going to see next. Something else I really like in these scenes. Not only do they mirror each other in the framing, but Helen's apartment and the one in which the murder happened are actually the same layout.
That's not Cabrini Green. That's this building, Lincoln Village. My apartment was built as a housing project.
They covered the cinder block in plaster, and they sold the lot off as condos.
It's a thematic way of saying Helen is already close to the story. The main difference, of course, is the intensity in the scenes. Helen and her friend are spooking each other a bit with the ghost story here, but the danger is suddenly very real at the murder location, which is guarded by gangbangers. Much scarier in the moment than any urban legend. It's a dose of reality that Helen sorely needs, but it doesn't really take. In fact, it's really just a misdirection from the main danger in the story, which is Candyman himself. This scene is a great example of sound at work to build the atmosphere. Right from that first transition into the scene.
Candyman.
Helen's snooty professor recounts Candyman's backstory. As he tells the story, sound effects play under Helen's reaction. Notice the slow camera push-in as well.
They chased Candyman through the town to Cabrini Green, where they proceeded to saw off his right hand with a rusty blade.
They get louder as the story gets more horrible, and Helen gets more horrified in return.
Beginning of his ordeal. Nearby, there was an apiary. Dozens of hives, filled with hungry bees. They smashed the hives and stole the honeycomb and smeared it over his prone, naked body.
If you listen closely, you'll even hear the sound of the other diners in the background drop out, really drawing you into the story. Even the choice of this actor contributes. His voice is very distinct, great for a storyteller. And that laugh. Without giving too much away, Helen continues to lose her innocence scene after scene as she's drawn into the story. Her obsession with the Candyman legend eventually pushes her so far as to commit the ultimate sin of a folklorist, becoming part of the story. It just keeps getting worse and worse for Helen, and for us. There's a lot more to Candyman. Themes of lust, loss, hubris, and staring into the abyss. For the horror fan or the moralist, there's plenty to sink your teeth into underneath the surface. It's worth a watch. And while you're at it, keep an eye and an ear on the way it draws you in to its atmosphere.